Hey Jeff, you know how we both made resolutions to shoot more people photos?
Of course I remember. It's only February.
Yeah, 2024. We made those resolutions back in 2023.
2023? Really? What's wrong with us?
Making better people photos often means using artificial light.
Because most of us don't live in perpetual golden hour light.
So learning how to make and control light might just help us finally realize these resolutions.
Now, we've both sat at the feet of the masters.
That's right, we've watched Joe McNally and Greg Heisler both work their magic in workshops.
And we were deeply inspired.
But I could use some practical help when it comes to Flash.
Excuse me, did somebody ring? Did you ring?
Roberto Valenzuela, how did you get in here?
Of course I'm here. I am the patron saint of all frustrated Flash photographers out there in the world. I'm here to help.
Call me a believer. Roberto, thanks so much for being on Photocombobulate. It's a pleasure. You've got a great new book out. We want to talk about that book, but there's so many other things about you that's interesting, so we'll dive into as much of it as we can. But first, can you give us just a little introduction, our elevator pitch for you?
I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. That's
Perfect.
I love it. I love like buying a camera and a lens and like learning everything about it. I don't want to. If I spend a single dollar on a piece of gear or software, I want to learn everything about it, and it makes me so happy to know the ins and outs of the things I buy. I love helping people. I've been a teacher my entire life. I've been teaching. I used to teach classical guitar and flamenco guitar for a long time, for 10 years. I taught 4,000 people how to play the guitar in those years.
Wow.
Then I became a high school economics and finance and accounting and marketing teacher. I also was an elementary school teacher for music theory, guitar, music theory, and music history. And now I'm teaching photography. So it's like, I can't imagine my life without the glorious feeling of being helpful to people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wake up in the morning looking forward to coffee and helping another fellow photographer do better or achieve their goals, whatever they may be. Sometimes their goals are not financial. Sometimes their goals are personal. Sometimes it's some other project that they have. And if I can help and I can be a part of that in some way, that's my happy place. That's who I am.
Awesome. But that's not all of who you are, right? You're also a very accomplished wedding and portrait photographer, commercial photographer. I was looking through your website. Your portfolio is incredible. And because you're a people photography specialist who happens to be all of these other amazing things. All these great photographers that I've ever known or met all have fascinating lives outside of photography. So there must be something to that, right? But your love of teaching is evident in your writing and in your conferences and workshops, I'm sure. But the thing that really struck me was you got the chops. You make great photos. There's a lot of people out there like me who are pretty good at teaching, definitely better at teaching than taking photos. You are really good at taking photos, and it seems like you're also a pretty awesome teacher. So what a double threat.
Yeah, I think it comes with the territory of being a nerd. Like when you really, like, guys like Mason and Jeff, I really like photography. It is a real joy for me. So of course I want to improve, and of course I have worked really hard to improve. I'm curious about how to make things better, and that curiosity combined with action has made me exponentially better.
Mm-hmm.
And every week for 20 years, I have like a formal practice session that I do in photography. Something that I failed at during the week, I put it on a red folder on my computer every week. And I'm proud to say that in 20 years of being a photographer, I have never missed that week of practice.
That is awesome.
Wow.
Does that come from your music background? Just the idea of repetition and practice?
Absolutely. That one of the main differences between a musician, a professional performing musician, and a photographer is that if you're a classical pianist, you have to work 30 to 40 hours a week of highly concentrated, deliberate practice. And then when you perform, you're just performing what you practiced.
Mm.
When you're a photographer, you never perform. You just keep practicing forever.
Yeah.
And because the cameras are so good and everything comes out and you can fix so many things with AI and everything, the performance part of it has been almost been removed, and it has been replaced with more software fixes and things like this. The problem with that is that takes the fun out of the photography side.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to argue with anyone about the process. Everyone has their own, but I will argue that it is much more fun, at least for me, to have an incredible image with the most robust file right out of camera. And what does a robust file mean? I mean a file that is shot at ISO 100 or 2, and something that is full of light where the light's supposed to be, where light communicates something to the viewer. It's not just used to illuminate the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And photography is a playground of skill. If you get a camera out and you just get out on the street, a skilled photographer can get crazy photos you never even saw. And that to me cannot be wasted. It cannot, that ability that a photographer can do that shall not be wasted. It is so fun. It's so fun to be a good photographer. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It is not that fun to buy a $6,000 body and a $2,000 lens and a $1,500 flash, and your photos look not that great.
Yeah.
Like, the expressions on your clients are not great. The posing is not great. The lighting looks flat. The composition is lackluster. It's not that fun. Also, I'm under a lot of pressure during my shoots. I shoot for a lot of big clients. I'm a fashion photographer here in LA. I'm a Canon Explorer of Light. I'm an educator. I'm an author. Not as much as Jeff is. Jeff has written more books than there are grains of sand in the Pacific Ocean. But in 6,000 lifetimes, I will catch up to Jeff.
Everybody has to have goals, right?
Yeah.
Goals. I count the grains of sand as I'm walking through Santa Monica Beach, and I say, "There's more books written by Jeff than this each grain of sand." But when you have an art director next to you and a whole team of 20 people, and there's a high-end model in front of you, and all these slides and the fashion and stuff, you better do a good job,
Yeah.
And when you're a wedding photographer, you better do a good job because it's a one-time deal.
Well, and also, I mean, in both of those situations, it's not just that you're dealing with, hairstyling and camera gear and lights and all that. Like, you're dealing with time. So it's not like you have the luxury of saying, "Oh, guys, this isn't really working. Can we just extend this fashion shoot another 2 or 3 hours?" I mean, maybe that happens occasionally, but my impression is that no, like people got places to be. Every minute you're there is costing somebody money, and so this really ties into what you were saying about the repetition, because I think a lot of photographers are like, I've got a great camera and I'm going to go out and I'm going to be inspired, and like, that's great, but when the time comes when you're in that clutch situation where you need to get the shot or the light is about to change, like, you need to have that repetition behind you in order to make that happen, right?
Yeah, there is no redo on those shoots, by the way. It's like a wedding. You have the time of a lot of professionals that have been doing this for a long time. They have no patience for mistakes like that. But even if you're a family photographer, this is what motivates me, okay? Like, Imagine all the work it takes to take a family photo from the customer's point of view. Imagine the mom picking out clothes, buying clothes from Amazon, shopping at Nordstrom's, whatever you shop. Imagine picking out clothes for your children, like make sure that they match, but they don't match too much. So it doesn't.
Yeah.
Imagine the day you wake up in the morning as the day of the shoot and you're doing your hair and you're putting the curlers on and you're putting your makeup. You know, you're excited. The energy's in the air. The kids are definitely not excited, but the mom and dad are. Well, the dad is not, but the mom is. And it's like this entire thing. And imagine you finally show up, you bring your camera, and then you take a photo, and the lighting is just like nothing, and it just looks like anyone could have taken it. God, what a disaster! Like I want people to be like, this was worth it. The whole shopping for the clothes, and I want people to be like, gosh, look at the results of this. It's just incredible. Like, I'm so excited. And then they treasure those photos forever. I can't possibly let myself not be good enough to give them that and give them that experience. I'm never gonna name names, but I have so many photographers, so many family friends and stuff that take their photos. I don't photograph friends or family. Like, if you're my friend or you're a family of mine, like, I'm not gonna photograph you. So people come to me and they're like, we're getting our family portrait, and you take it. It's like, I don't shoot friends or family for obvious reasons. But then when the photos come back from whoever they hired, they took the family to a place with just natural light, and natural light can be good, but many times it needs help.
Yeah.
And unless you have a building, like a white building in front of the people, bouncing light back from the sun, you're going to have raccoon eyes, because if your light is just the sun from the sky and you're just putting them in some open shade, you're just going to have raccoon eyes. So sure enough, they come to me with the photos, and they all have, it just looks terrible, you know? And then they tell me they're disappointed because they went through so much work. And I'm just like, God, why can we as an industry just fix this?
Yeah, and you can't fix it with the shadow slider, right? So I want to dive into your book a little bit, because this what you're talking about is the crux of the beginning of your book, which I think is a brilliant approach to talking about flash photography specifically, in that there's snapshots, there's photographs, and then there's portraits, and you build this up. You talk about this progression, and I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast really want to make portraits, and oftentimes we end up with photographs. Obviously, we all take snapshots from time to time, but we're trying to be thoughtful and deliberate. We talk about this a lot on this podcast, being deliberate and thoughtful, and not wasting time, and being proud of our work and being proud of our craft. And what I love is that you talk about in your book, you can make a great photograph, a portrait, by managing the light. And you've come up with a brilliant tool, a memory aid that's in your book. And I want to say what it is, and then I want you to walk us through it, because it's such a practical and simple idea that I've never heard anybody else approach it this way. We mentioned Joe McNally and Greg Heiser, awesome portrait photographers, amazing portrait photographers, obviously masters. You go to one of their workshops, they'll demonstrate all day, but they don't have something you can put in your pocket and say, when you do this, these are the things you're doing. Follow this progression.
And before we get to that, we need to say, we haven't yet said the title of this amazing book. So let's make sure we cover that first. And it is called, actually, I think we have a visual aid here.
You're going to hold it up for us. Yeah, he's got a hard copy. This book just came out from Rocky Nook. So Jeff and I have the electronic versions, but Roberto has that. It's gorgeous. Rocky Nook does such a great job with these books. They're well worth getting a printed version for sure.
Yeah. Picture Perfect Flash is called. It is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. Lots of great images in it, of course, but it's not
it smells good.
And they always smell
right.
Good. I know.
That's good.
I know.
They do. The brand new Rocky Nook books always smell really good. Like that's an actual thing.
That's a Rocky
Great.
fragrance. Yeah. Signature fragrance. So I want to talk about this memory aid. It's FACES. Okay. So it's an acronym, FACES. And the F in FACES is fix the light. A is add light. C is create a mood. E is effects with flash. And S is sculpt the light. So Roberto, can you walk us through this? Because a lot of us are stuck at like, add the light. But I had not heard anyone approach this with the progression of you're gonna fix the light that you're being dealt, and then you're gonna add to that. So to walk us through this, because it's a great approach. I really like it.
Let's the best way to describe this FACES acronym is to understand the beginnings of it, which is I'm trying to get photographers to see the amazing benefits of using flash in their work. Flash is not always necessary, by the way, but most of the time it can improve everything. So sometimes natural light is the best, and nothing can beat it. But 90% of the time of other times, flash can improve. My experience learning flash was with a lot of people giving me demos of what they do. Like, here's a photo, and then they show me the lighting diagram, and I thought that was the only way people can learn flash, is through an instructor giving you a lighting diagram and explaining that light, the key light, the ring light, you know what I mean? Like the key light, the main light, the kicker light, the background light, and then you can discuss 3 light setups and all this, and it never went into the brain.
Yeah.
Like, and the reason it never went into the brain is that when you are listening to somebody talk like that, you understand it based on their photo.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's your turn to be behind the camera, it's never the same scenario. Even the size of your studio changes the way the lights should be placed. So even if you follow the diagram to the T, the walls of the studio could be white or black or red or whatever, and that could contaminate. Like if the studio is large or wide, that will create a different effect than if the studio is very narrow where you're shooting. So point is, the situation is never the same. So I always drew a blank. So when I decided to write this book, I did not want to go in that direction because it has not been the most effective for me. You know? So I thought very hard. And if you talk to Rocky Nook, they were so frustrated because for the first time in my life of writing books, this is the first time it took me 8 months to come up with that FACES acronym. It took me 8 months of thinking about every scenario I could put myself. If I was having dinner at a restaurant by the beach, I would question myself. If I had a photo shoot right now in this beach, what would I do? If I walked to the bathroom at that restaurant and somebody said, we want you to do a photo shoot of our servers, like walking to serve food, like what would I do in this scenario? And the answer was never think back of the diagrams I was taught by other people.
Right.
It was never that. It was, what is the situation here? What are my current circumstances that I'm in right now? So the FACES acronym was born after you realize the very first step in your conquering flash journey, which is consider your scenario unique to you. Okay, that's the first thing. And in the book, I even say, forget FACES until you understand your scenario. Your scenario is like this: how high is the roof? Where is there window light? How much light contamination do you have? Is there green walls bouncing light back? Like, how is the floor dark wood, or is it light, or is it cement? Is sun coming in through the window directly, or is it indirect? Once you understand how to walk into a place and kind of assess those things, now you're ready for FACES. Okay.
Awesome.
And FACES was born, especially the F is probably, I wouldn't say the most, yeah, it is the most important, but F is, sounds funny, it's like the F word. You know?
You start by yelling the F word.
Yeah, start by yelling the F word, but I find F very interesting. I never thought about writing the book with F which is fix the light, is the first thing you should do before you add flash. If you add flash to a photo that the light needed fixing, you are screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never any instructor or any book or anything that ever told me that you need to assess your situation and realize, do you need to fix the light? Like, do we need to make adjustments to the light in your environment before you start introducing flash to your portrait or to your backgrounds? Because when you add flash to a photo, you're adding flash not just to your portrait, but you're adding flash to your background as well. Mm-hmm. Like this. This is a photo of my children. This room is lit perfectly. The background is lit perfectly. There is a nice tree outside. And even though they're against the window, there's no light reaching them. They're lit perfectly. Mm-hmm. This is a situation where fixing the light really comes in. The light in this room is pretty bad. So it starts out with fix the light. Once the light has been fixed, and you need to read the book to realize what that really even means. Like, what does it mean when you have accomplished the light? Yeah. I guess if I have to say it on this podcast, is what does it mean to fix the light? It means that your subject and your background are now ready to receive the light you're going to put in. Mm. There's no longer any light contamination in your scene. If you go out and you put a person outside and there is a tree and they're getting that splotchy, shadowy, harsh light in their face, it doesn't matter how hard you throw a flash into their face, you're going to have that splotchiness there. You're just going to blow out the whole face on top, trying to get rid of that.
Yeah.
So you got to have a clean surface, like a clean canvas. And once your canvas is clean, then you start slapping the light to do whatever you want it to do. So the entire Faces system began with a revelation in my mind after thinking that you cannot add flash until you fix the light.
Yeah. Now, do you find that at that stage, does that mean like a big radical change in the existing light, or can that just mean like we got to get rid of these overhead lights, like turn that off and maybe block that window, or is it sometimes a lot more than that?
It's actually a very simple thing. Fixing the light can be a 10-second fix. For example, let's say you're outdoors in some event and you're trying to take a photo of a group of 3 people or something, okay, a portrait or whatever. If you simply turn their faces towards their own shadow on the floor, you now have mathematically put the sun directly behind their head, which means that they now have clean light. It might not be good light. It's not high quality light,
right?
But it is clean light.
It's ready to be added to, right?
It's ready to be added to. So
that's a great distinction.
Yeah, you have a clean canvas now. Okay, so if you have a person here, and you simply turn their face so that their nose is pointed to the direction of where their shadow is on the ground, you have clean light, you're ready to go, you have fixed the light. It could be as simple as please turn around, face your shadow, boom, you're done, 3 seconds.
Nice.
Okay. And the great thing about that technique is that everyone has a shadow outside. Everyone has a shadow. So if you notice people's photos when they use flash, they never fix that. A lot of times they missed fixing the light. They have light spill on the cheek, so they have sun hitting the cheek. And then when they add flash, it doesn't quite mix with the natural light coming in. And then they say, oh, flash looks terrible. So I was very happy when I came up with that fix the light thing, because that changed, that set up the whole book for success.
Nice.
The second part is add light, which is the A for faces. And I didn't realize when I was going to write that chapter on add light, how many ways you could add light to a photo. For example, let me see here. Okay, here we go. Add light. Like, let's think about this. When you tell somebody add light to a subject, what do? They grab their little light stand, they put their flash that comes with their two-foot softbox or something like that. they turn it on, they put it on TTL or manual, whatever, and they fire a flash towards your subject. That's usually what 99% of the people do. But if you're trying to help people become flash masters and really get into it and see the potentials of flash, there has to be more than that. So I came out with 6 things that you can consider when you're adding flash. The first one is, I'm not going to talk about the first one because it's a little complicated to explain, and I don't want to get into this one, but
yeah.
The second one is add light to create shape, contrast, or drama. Add light to lift shadows. Add light to create separation between subject and background. Add light to control contrast through the entire frame. Like, how contrasty do you want it to be, or how low contrast do you want it to be? Or add light to bring attention to a specific area in the photograph. Now that you have those six reasons to add light, now you have in your pocket 6 questions you can ask yourself. Do I like the contrast here? Is it too high? Do I want to lower the contrast? And by that, I mean, let's say you go outside and the sky is pure bright and it's just crazy bright. And then you have your subjects on the ground, they're in open shade because you're trying to clean the light. Well, the open shade and the bright sky are very contrasty towards each other. So the first question is, do I like that? And if you do, then great. But if you want to kind of lower that contrast ratio, then you can do that by adding light to lower that, to bring the sky and your subject to be closer to each other. They're not going to be the same, but you can bring them closer to each other. How about add light to create shape, contrast, and drama? Who does that? Usually people add light just to illuminate the person's face and maybe get rid of raccoon eyes. Mm-hmm. But if you use like a beauty dish outside, now you're adding shaping to the face. You're adding some contouring to the face. So that's the A. The C is my favorite because it's about creating another mood. So let's say you walk into a bar, like what Joe McNally would do. And you know, he does those cool bar shots, right? Where it's like
amazing.
It's very moody and stuff like that. Imagine you walk into a bar and the bar just has regular LED lights that are daylight balanced and it just doesn't have any kind of mood. With the book now, it actually teaches you a method. Say, what if I want to change the mood? What if I want to make it into like a speakeasy with like amber tungsten lights, like illuminating, and everybody's having a very nice cognac, and they're having a great time, and it has a very nice mood to it. Well, now you can add flash. You can use flashes with gels or whatnot to create flash, to create mood, right? That has been really fun for me, walking into a place and telling my students, change the mood completely. And then they do it, and then they change it again. And then they do it, and they change it again. 3 times I have them change the mood. Each photo looks like a different bar.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It pushes you. It pushes you. The E is on special effects. We all know that if you add flash to your exposures, you can freeze things that are moving quickly. You can create stroboscopic flash effects. You can create optical illusions in a camera that you could not do with natural light. There is so many fun things you can do. You can do multiple exposures with flash. So it gives the reader a plethora of options of what you can do with flash other than just looking at somebody's lighting diagram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? And the last one is S, which stands for sculpting the light. That's the one that's more technical. That one does require equipment, and it requires you get to know how the light modifiers that you buy, what they do, and how they shape the light. However, at the end of the book, because I knew that would be difficult, I wrote this entire section called Lighting Exercises. Mm-hmm. And the first exercise is the most important exercise. And it has to do with understanding how each piece of equipment was meant to be used. A beauty dish at 12 inches is the proper use of a beauty dish. If you put a beauty dish at 5 feet, you might as well just use an umbrella. Mm-hmm. So you're no longer using the reason why you bought a beauty dish.
Right.
But people don't know that. They think if you buy a beauty dish, no matter where you put it, it's gonna look like a beauty dish. It's not. It's not gonna look like a beauty dish. If you put the beauty dish 10 feet from your subject, it's just gonna look like hard blob of light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you put it in the right place, like close to the person's face, it's gonna give you that sculpting quality that the beauty dish was designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's the last one. That's sculpting the light, which I find it to be super entertaining to try to sculpt people's faces outdoors. Most people never try to sculpt the face outdoors. They just simply illuminate the person outdoors. In studio work, yeah, I see a lot more people sculpting light in studio work, but not really on location. And it's really cool to do it on location too. So that's the acronym, guys. That's FACES. It's fix the light, add the light, create the mood, special effects, and sculpt the light. I hope that really helps readers.
It is such a great key to unlock the confusion that happens when you're faced with the situation, and you're incredibly prescient to think about. Every situation is different. You have to read the light so that you can know how to fix it. You know, it's very situational. Most of us don't have crews. We don't have a truck full of gear, and we're trying to make do with what we have. I'm gonna get personal and say I used to use flashes. I used to have a set of speed lights and wireless triggers and all that stuff. And I got away from flash photography in an effort to have more control. I'm a control freak. And I felt like hot lights were the answer. And I've invested in a set of hot lights, and I do some portrait photography with them. I photograph dancers from time to time. And I've had some success modifying hot light and working with beauty dishes and things like that. But I'm starting to realize that the last couple shoots I did, I was like, you know what? I think flashes would have been better here. So help us out, because it's easy for us to go out and buy some LED panels or a couple of cheap, $150 hot lights. Obviously, flash being a short duration burst of light gives you that control over effects that you talk about. When I was a photojournalist many decades ago, I used to love to drag the shutter and use second curtain sync. It created a sense of motion, created a really cool visual effect. I can't do that with hot lights, right? That's just not an effect that's on my palette. So talk us through gear and what someone who isn't going out necessarily and shooting commercial stuff, but is maybe shooting a high school senior portrait, or is doing some stuff for families or relatives. What sort of setup is going to help us get this FACES formula working for us?
So LED lights are a new popular item these days. They are coming out with 1200 watts. Now, Nanlux has a 2400 watt light now. Wow. Okay. Which is just crazy that an LED light that sucks as much power as a kitchen blender, that's it, can produce 2400 watts or even 1200 watts of light. So I say that there is companies like Stella Pro that have the Reflex S lights. Those. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah, it's kind of a round.
It's a little device like this little. Mm-hmm. It's called Reflex S. They're very powerful LED lights, but they're meant to be portable.
Okay.
Right? Now, there's a lot of. Let's make this very clear for all the listeners. Okay. So if you're confused about light is light and all of that, but light is not light. There's a difference between the way it works, right? Mm-hmm. Natural light, it's constantly hitting your subject. If your subject is moving quite fast, the natural light might not be enough to freeze that motion, depending on what camera settings you may have.
Yeah.
But if you want a robust file, like ISO 100 kind of file, robust file that you can really do a lot with it in post-production and print it beautifully, you're going to need more power. You're going to need that flash duration time that a flash provides. An LED light is no different than natural light. It's just closer to your subject, but it still behaves 100% like natural light. So if you are trying to shoot something at ISO 100 and you want to get a aperture f1.2 and you want to do a portrait at 1.2, maybe LED light is your best option because you can illuminate them really well, get that light really powerful, and then get your 1.2 aperture and really get your shutter speed to 8,000 or whatever you need to do. And now the Canon R3, you can shoot at shutter speed like 50,000 or something.
Wow.
You know, so if you do that, then you'll be able to get those blurry ears and all of that with natural light. I mean, with LEDs, which is basically natural light. But the secret sauce in flash is portability and flash duration. To get a lot of light outside on an LED light, you need a full power. You need like a nuclear power plant to power a light to do that.
Yeah.
If you are 5 inches from the person with a light, then you will see the light on their face. But if you're 20 feet, you forget it. And unless you're photographing with like a Nanlux 1200 watt crazy production light for movies, you're not going to see that light that well, you know? And the second part is, no matter how much money you spend on an LED light, it doesn't have duration time. It's just, and let's explain to people what that even means.
Yeah.
Flash duration is what makes flash magical. It creates a burst of light, but by the time it turns from the off position to the maximum output to 90% of it being back to zero, that process is called the flash duration time. So just think of it: light off, light on really quickly, and then immediately light off, right? That curvature happens at 1/30,000th of a second or 1/50,000th of a second. And with some lights, it could happen at 1/80,000th of a second. So if you're shooting something at 1/30,000th of a second flash duration time, and the light is very close to your subject, they're going to be affected by that flash duration time. They will freeze no matter what your shutter speed is. Well, to some extent, right? So hair moving with a fan, if you have hair and you want to get that fan, like this photo here, for example, of the cover, like you see the fan, every single hair, you can feel it on the photo because I'm using flash duration. So as the flash, when the flash is off and then it turns on and then it goes back off, it freezes the hair at that 30,000th of a second time frame, and nothing can escape that, something that fast, you know? So unless it's like a bullet or something. So you get the ability of freezing effects. You also get the advantage of higher contrast, better contrast lighting. You also get the portability aspect. A ProPhoto A2 is a little tiny device this small. It only shoots 100 watts of light, but 100 watts of light on a strobe is almost like the equivalent of 1,200 watts on an LED light. You know?
That's an important distinction. Yeah,
it is.
It's important.
You can grab a flash like a ProPhoto A2 and put it in your pocket, and now you have the power of a $6,000 cinema production LED light, but in your pocket. You know? And the other thing I would say is that people complain that flash looks artificial. It doesn't look natural, doesn't look beautiful like natural light. The solution I can offer everyone out there that's easy to do is paper towels. Paper towels. You can go to Target, buy yourself some paper towels, and paper towels are something I use in every photo shoot I do. When you put the paper towel and you fold it, you're creating more diffusion and more diffusion. Eventually, that diffusion will match exactly what the natural light is doing. If you put a gel and you sandwich that gel between the paper towels and you shoot the flash through that, you're going to get that warmer light. You know, that way you don't have to cut it perfectly around the light or have it attached to the. You can just grab a sloppy piece of CTO gel that you find somewhere, put it on the paper towel, and shoot through it. And it's going to give you not only the diffusion, but it's going to give you the color that you want. So people say, I don't want to have to invest in all these things. investing a flash and investing a roll of toilet paper of paper
towels and a couple of CTO gels. So for people who don't know, CTO is convert to orange, right? So it's a warming gel that you can send light through, and it'll look more like a setting sun than that bright blue light that we power onto people when we shoot with a bare flash. Great.
Wow.
One of the things
that walk around with all this production.
Yeah, it can be simple.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to mention real quick that I got from your book that I thought was a great tip, if you're shooting somebody and you want a flattering light, and we oftentimes think about this as a post-production step, but you give a great tip on creating flattering skin with by using a long shutter speed, but relying on that short duration flash. So you drag the shutter, use a slow shutter speed so that there's some subject movement, and then the flash creates the contrast and sharpness, but it gives a softening effect to the skin because the exposure is longer than the flash duration. So I think that's a really cool tip that I hadn't actually ever thought of. Because a lot of times we'll use lights or flashes, and it can if it's not done right, it can be incredibly unflattering. And we'll sit in Lightroom and we'll jam around with our smart masking tools and our smart portrait tools, and we'll soften skin and do all that, and it ends up just looking awful. You can take care of this with your light and not have to rely on your Lightroom skills later, right?
Exactly. This came from my weekly practice sessions. We all know that most people that are in some sort of interior scenario, or like a studio or their home or whatever, or their garage, if they have like a garage photo studio, we all know that the settings that the world preaches when it comes to that is ISO 100 or 200, aperture f11 or f16, and your shutter speed is 1/200. And that's basically what everyone learns. And so in one of my practice sessions was, what if I don't want to do that? What if I want to change my shutter speed to something else? So I started experimenting until I brought it down to 1/2 second exposure or 1/4 second exposure. And as I started going down from f11 to f8 to f5.6 to f4 to f2.8 like that, as I started changing my shutter speed to slower and slower shutter speeds,
right,
when I started noticing that if the flash was close to the subject, the eyes, lips, and nose holes, and they stayed sharp. But the skin, because it's the same color throughout the face, it created some optical effect that it made it look like it was already retouched.
Yeah.
It was already photoshopped, because the movement of the person when you're shooting them, they make a small movement with their face. That's enough movement that when the flash fires, combined with that subtle movement and that slow shutter speed, it keeps the skin still sharp, but it has a softening effect to it. The eyes, however, look tack sharp. At least one of them will. Not always both. Okay? But some of the photos that my clients have liked the most was with this technique. The problem with this technique is that it requires a very strong flash. Yeah. So you do need to rent, like, if you don't have like a Profoto B10X Plus or something, you need at least 500 watts of power on the flash. So if you're trying to do that with like a Profoto A2, which is only 100 watts of power, it might not be enough.
Okay.
But if you have like a Profoto B10X Plus, 500 watts will definitely do the job. If you have like a 1200 watt pack, that will definitely do the job.
Sure.
But the more power you have, the better.
For that particular effect, for sure.
That effect. Interesting.
Yeah.
While we're talking about flashes, you go into this in the book, and we want to make sure people understand that we're just scratching the surface of your book here. You talk a lot about the difference between TTL and manual flash, and this is something that I know I struggled with flash photography. You go listen to Joe McNally, and he's like, "Oh, TTL, why buy a Porsche and not drive it the way it was designed to drive. And this argument I understand, but I would always find myself switching over to manual because I felt like I wasn't getting the results that I was expecting from my flashes. That's one of the challenges with flashes is you're looking through your camera and you're looking at the subject and you don't see what you're going to get until you take the photo. And then you have to review your work and adjust. And so it's a time-consuming process. You're like, hang on a second, I did something wrong. And it's practice, I'm sure. But I want you to address the manual versus TTL, because I think a lot of people struggle with flash photography because they're trying to do TTL and their camera's fighting them.
Right. Look, I think TTL is incredible. And the new Canon EL1 flashes now have eye detection TTL.
Oh my!
Which means that they detect only the light in your eye, not the light in your forehead or in your face, but only the light in your eye. So usually the eyebrows create, and the bone here creates a bit of a shadow effect. That's the way our bodies were designed to be able to protect our eyes from the sun. So when you have eye detect TTL, it can actually say, hey, the eyes are actually quite dark because of the eyebrows, right? Not the eyebrow, but the bone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So technology is definitely getting better, but it's never going to change the fact that TTL is a computer deciding what to do for you. And one of the best things I can tell people listening to this is this. TTL is amazing. Nothing wrong with it. But it's usually used to illuminate a subject properly. My whole idea of writing this book is not to use light just to illuminate, is to use light to communicate something. So when you're in the department of communicating a message, you cannot let the computer just throw light at a subject. That's just throwing light at a subject. It's the proper amount of light, but it is not it's not communicating anything. It's basically creating a proper exposure on that person's face. I just talked earlier about the 6 different things you can do to add light. Mm-hmm. Well, one of them was create contrast and drama. Well, you cannot do that with TTL, just throwing light at a person's face.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a hurry and you have somebody walking towards your camera and you need to get a proper exposure, nothing can beat TTL for those scenarios. If your goal is to get the exposure as fast as possible in something that's in action, you can't beat it. But if you're in a situation where you're trying to create a high school senior portrait, a family portrait, something where you have a little more time, a little more patience, even if you have 30 more seconds, no, nothing can beat the power of manual. The second thing I will say to people is when you are in TTL, a lot of factors affect that computer's decision of how much flash to put out. You may not know why those decisions were made. You don't know if you have a mirror behind your subject and you point a camera, that mirror is going to reflect 100% of the light that the pre-flash sends. And it's going to say, whoa, it's a lot of light here. We don't need to do anything. But it's just because the mirror tricked the computer inside the flash.
Right. Yeah.
So one thing I will say to people is to remove all doubt. Manual is very simple. You turn it on, pick any power you want. I usually go 1/16. If it's too bright, turn it down. If it's too dark, turn it up. And you're done.
Well, and it also, if you're using multiple units, it's also something you can tailor each unit. I think TTL is wonderful if you're using a single speed light, especially if it's on the camera, right? But if you're using multiple lights, I always thought that I never got what I was expecting with TTL when I had multiple lights, even just 2. It would be like, what? What is it seeing? And just so people understand, we're trying to make things simple here. TTL means through the lens, and the camera, you don't see this, but the moment you take the photo, it sends out a pre-flash that the camera reads through the lens and adjusts the flash, throttles it up and down to make the illumination proper. in the opinion of the camera, right? So it's all happening very, very quickly. It's not something we are controlling. It's just done when you set it to TTL.
Mason,
yeah.
I'll say one more thing for the audience real quick. I think the best comparison I can come up with TTL versus manual is like the Tesla's self-driving function. Okay? It's designed to help you alleviate some of the stress of driving. But you're in such high anxiety the whole time because you don't know if you're gonna die, live. You don't know if it's gonna see, if something's going to reflect light at the sensors and it's gonna think there's something on the road and it's gonna do a ghost brake or it brakes as hard as it can because he thinks there's something on the road.
Yeah.
You just don't know what the car is seeing. That car is just designed to stay on the lane and drive, and it's designed to what it's designed to do. But the anxiety inside the driver is way, way worse than it's even worth it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you feel like you can never take your eyes. It's supposed to help you relax.
Right.
And
but it's the opposite.
You're just like, oh my God, is he gonna make a turn? Is it gonna go in the middle lane? There's a pedestrian coming, there's a cat. Like you just don't know. And I think TTL is like self-driving function. And when manual comes around, you control it. You know?
Yeah.
It's just a lot easier.
Well, and you know, I teach a lot of photography, and I'm a advocate for manual, and I really want people to have full control. I'm a control freak. When I'm got a camera in my hands, I want to control every aspect of that photograph because it's my expression. It's not the camera's expression that I'm going for. And so, you know, TTL I always felt like I was just not having a good time. It just was not the way I wanted to go. But manual was oftentimes frustrating for me too, because I just didn't practice. And I think that the key for people like Jeff and I who don't go out and photograph people every week, certainly not every day, but not even every month sometimes, it's practice. So I want to kind of wrap up here by talking about this thing that you mentioned early on, where you make a mistake, you find an error in your work, you identify it, and then you go and you kill it through practice. So talk about that and kind of give us some practical pointers. How do you do that? You mentioned a folder on your computer. I love that idea. So can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, I'll make a quick one. So in my lighting book called Picture Perfect Lighting, I wrote something called the lighting benchmark. That lighting benchmark came from my exercises that I do every week. And to the audience, I like to tell them that even though I'm at the level that I'm at now, I still take my training seriously as a photographer because I'm a classical guitarist by training. So I will never think I am good enough not to practice again. I will never think I got it enough. There's always weaknesses and holes in my techniques that I need to address. How do you address them? Well, when you do a photo shoot, I look at all the photos. I pick out the best ones to give to the client or for them to see. And then I have a red folder on each of my photo shoot folders is a red folder or red label. That folder has my little photos that had an issue, had a little mistake. The mistakes are divided into 4 categories. A composition problem, a lighting problem, a posing problem, or a storytelling problem. Sorry, a camera settings problem.
Okay.
Right? So I have those 4 categories. Each category gets labeled by another color. So the photos get labeled red yellow is a lighting problem, blue is a composition problem, green is a camera settings problem, and orange, whatever is a posing problem or posing or expression problem.
Okay.
When you look at your folder, you see all these yellow dots everywhere. You realize you have a lighting problem. You know, like you have all these photos and 80% of them have a yellow dot to them, which means that you constantly made lighting mistakes, right? If there's a bunch of orange dots, then I realize I really messed up on the posing side of these things. If I see the other color, like purple or whatever, I realize I messed up my camera settings, right? So through the lighting benchmark that I talked about at the beginning was when I was taking photos of people outdoors, I always noticed that the lighting on the face wasn't very beautiful. It was like bright here, bright in the forehead, dark in the eyes, dark on the, like, it just didn't look like really professional to me. Mm-hmm. And when you're shooting these things with the most expensive photographic equipment, modern equipment ever made, the problem must be me, right? It's not the camera, right? So I came up with a practice session on natural light modifiers that occur in the environment. For example, buildings, FedEx trucks, whatever could be in the environment. And I started experimenting by putting my mannequin. I don't use models for a lot of my practice sessions. I use a mannequin, so I don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I don't want to worry about them getting annoyed or like having enough or having to feed them. So I just had a mannequin. There's a hole in the mannequin at the bottom, and I attach the mannequin to a light stand, and then I just take it with me to do my practice session.
I love it.
You can spend all day with a mannequin. Mannequin will be perfect for you. And when I started putting the mannequin in front of FedEx trucks and in front of UPS trucks, the UPS truck subtracted light, the FedEx truck was adding light. When I saw a building, like let's say you have a building here, but the building has a big window in the middle, but you turn the person's face to the right of that where there is no window, more light will be received by your subject than if you point their nose towards the section that has the window in it. Because the window decreases the reflective ability of that building. Mm-hmm. So even things like that, like if your subjects are across the street and they're pointing their face towards a building, if you're pointing their nose towards the section of the building that has all the windows, you just lost 10%, 20% of the light that you could have received if you just simply turn the nose towards the side that has less windows, right? So these experiments, these practice sessions are usually pretty short. They're usually 30 minutes. Sometimes they go for 45. Not really. It's rare. Mm-hmm. I do 30-minute sessions. I do them every week. And I would say the reason for my entire success that I have been blessed with in this photo industry has been because of those.
That's great.
As a result of those. As a classical concert guitarist, you can't perform a concert without practice an enormous amount of time before you get up on that stage. As a guitarist, you are performing live as a soloist. There is nothing to hide your mistakes. Mm-hmm. And you can certainly not Photoshop your mistake in the middle of a performance. Yeah. So I know everyone's different, but this is just the way my brain works because of my background. My background is I'm a classical concert guitarist. And I treated my photography the same. And why should I not practice my photography so I can then perform during a photo shoot?
Yeah, but it's not ever said. This is the perception that people would have of a high-level professional like yourself is that you shit gold nuggets every time you go out. You're open that camera bag, you yell camera, and someone throws you a camera, and you just make magic, right? And then you're like, I'm done, and you throw it, and the assistant catches it, and everything's great. But what you're saying, I want to read it back to you because I want to make sure I get this right, because this is a good tip for any type of photography. It doesn't have to be people photography. You scrutinize your work. Successful commercial work, you're still finding things every time that need to be labeled red, orange, whatever these things are. You're scrutinizing that, and then you're saying, I'm going to go out and recreate that situation with my mannequin. So it's a low threat, low risk environment. I'm going to go recreate that, and I'm going to get it right this time. And I'm going to figure out why I got it wrong. That's incredible, because that type of practice without using a live model, I think, is super important. Anytime I'm taking photographs of a person, even if it's just for fun, it's not a client, it's not, I always feel like I'm imposing on them. I'm imposing on their time, I'm imposing on their goodwill, and I need to make this quick. I cannot sit there and be head down on my camera going, what did I do there? And what you're looking around at the light and stuff like that, because I get self-conscious. And you're saying, deal with all that self-consciousness, deal with all of that in your time with a mannequin. in those situations. What a brilliant approach that, you know, as much as I love Joe McNally, and God knows Jeff and I adore the guy, he never talks about going back and to that bar where he didn't like the way his photos turned out and playing with the lights until he gets it right. He doesn't talk about that. And that's, I appreciate your vulnerability on that, because that was really eye-opening in the book.
No, I appreciate that. And, you know, to be honest, you cannot fix every problem with a mannequin. If it's a posing problem, you cannot do it with a mannequin.
Yeah.
But most of us, you know, we try to go out, we get pumped, we listen to this podcast. You're going to get pumped about practicing. You're going to ask your 13-year-old son to go outside and help you practice. And your 13-year-old son is going to give you about 10 seconds of practice time before he throws the towel. And then he's like, I'm done with this.
10 seconds is pretty generous.
And you're certainly not going to get them out there twice.
No.
Right?
No.
So a lot of these problems, besides posing, can be addressed with a mannequin. Composition can be addressed. Camera settings can be addressed. Lighting can be addressed with the mannequin. The only one that cannot be addressed is posing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it makes sense. Like, you develop your skill through practice.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't born with my low shutter speed, flash duration, portrait skin retouching in camera. Like when I was born, the doctor didn't say, "What a beautiful baby! Look at that gene of low shutter speed, high duration." Like, he's got that special gene. Like,
this kid's special.
Yeah, it's really special. Like, I was a very bad photographer. I did not have any natural inclination to do a good job as a photographer. I tried, I just couldn't do it. I was not good at it. Let's just put that out there. I just wasn't a good photographer. It would have been better for me to move on to something else. Had it not been for my classical guitar training, allowing me to realize that I can achieve any level I want as long as I put the work, right? I want to do. When I told my wife I want to be one of the best photographers in the city of Tucson, she was like, okay. When I told her I want to be one of the best in the nation, she was like, okay. And then later on, I said, I would like to be one of the most respected photographers in the planet. These things are all achievable, depending on how much work you're willing to put in. It has nothing to do with who you are or how old you are or how young you are, or what color your skin is or what country you live in. There's two types of people: the people that put in the work and the people that put in excuses.
Yeah.
And that's it. You either put in the work or you're in the second department of, I live in Zimbabwe, I live in Alabama, I live in a small town, nobody pays for photography. I live in Iceland, nobody gets married here. Like, the list goes on and on. If I could tell you all the excuses I've heard from my outings in the photo world, it is more than the books Jeff has written.
Go back to this. Back to this.
It is more. I have heard more excuses.
Yeah.
And I want to tell people, there's only two kinds of people out there. Which one are you going to be? Which camp are you in? Are you in the excuses camp? Or are you in the go buy a mannequin and shut up about your excuses and do something about it camp?
Yeah, go out and do the work, right?
Yeah.
Do the work.
That's amazing. Okay. This has been great. Roberto, your book, hold it up again. Got to show that book off again. Picture Perfect Flash, not your only book. So check out Rocky Nook. Right now, I noticed that on Rocky Nook, and we'll put a link to this in the show notes, there's a deal on this brand new book. Really encourage people to get the hard copy. It's gorgeous. And there's just something about having those pictures and all those great things in there. It's more than just pretty pictures, though. It's really practical, useful advice that I'm going to go back and refer to when I finally get off my butt and start working on my people photos again. Roberto, you also are a prolific workshop leader and conference speaker. So where can people find out where they can come and see you in person or work with you in person?
I would advise people that are at the camp of Let's Get the Work Done to come to the Photo Creators Conference in Tucson, Arizona. That is the most incredible experience in a conference you will ever have. We have had every top instructor in the country come, Joe McNally included, Lindsay Adler, Chris Knight, Peter Hurley, This year, we're having Jerry Guiones, myself, Felix Kunz, Christina Shirk, Jason Vincent, Arce Concepcion. We have the amount of talent coming is great, but what makes this conference special is the process. So I designed the conference to help people learn and actually be able to use their new skills when they leave the conference, which is a big difference between just listening to a speaker on stage, getting inspired, and then while you're eating your hot dog at lunch, you forget all about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I want people to have, so I tell every teacher at the Photo Creators that they're going to approach their classes by talking about a technique, demoing that, doing a demo of that technique so people can see the technique being done by the teacher. Then each student gets to try that technique in front of the teacher. And then the teacher gives them immediate feedback on how they did when they were trying it.
Wow.
This is the formula at the Photo Creators. Every teacher is going to teach their classes with these 4 things in mind. They're going to talk about a technique. They're going to demo that technique. They're going to have the students move the lights, change their settings. They are going to move the lights. They are going to pick up their lens. No one will do it for you. You're going to try it. And then the teacher will be there to help you. And then they will give you feedback. Because this is how you actually gain practical knowledge on how to use it when you're no longer at the conference. When you go back to Indiana, you go back to Texas, you go back to Minnesota, I want you to not feel like you wasted your money.
Yeah.
I want you to feel like you gained this knowledge and now you know how to apply it.
Yeah, you've done it.
You've done it. And you've got, very important, you got immediate feedback from the teacher right there. So if you don't have that last element, you don't know if you did it right or wrong. But if you have a teacher right there telling you, okay, I saw what you did. These things were done right. This is where it went down. This is where it went wrong. Let's fix this. Let's try it again. Fix it. Boom. Now you know what's up.
Yeah.
So it's a retreat style conference. There is no speakers on stage. There is no VIP tickets. You don't pay more to have lunch with the teachers there or anything like that. Everybody is in the community. Everybody's having breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. We all drink wine at night. It's a ranch. It's a dude ranch. It's called thephoto-creators.com. There's only 15 rooms available now.
Wow. And when is this? When's the next one?
May 6th through 9, 2024.
Okay.
People say, oh, it's so expensive, this and that. Here's a discount code for you. PCC, as in Photo Creators Conference, PCC, capital letters, 2024. Sorry, PCC 2024. That's going to give you a $300 discount on the price. Okay.
That's awesome.
And let me
put that in our show notes for sure.
Let me just make sure that is correct. Okay. But let me just give me one quick second. Just don't want to put it out there and then it's the code. Okay, let me just see here.
Now, while you're looking that up, I'm going to reinforce that having the opportunity to have a respected, gifted photographer over your shoulder saying that's great, you did that well, or you could adjust this, you could think about that. That is something I've never had the opportunity to do. I've gone to lots of workshops where I'm super inspired. I get some instruction, and I walk away without that hook being set by me actually putting my hands on a camera right there and doing it. That's
because you had that hot dog at lunch. The hot dog at lunch just erases all that knowledge.
Well, even getting a chance to meet and hang out with Joe McNally is worth money just because of the stories, the people. Photography, whether or not it's people photography is about people, and getting to know these really wonderful, amazing, talented, and really, really interesting people is worth the trip too. But coming back with skills that will make you some better photos is golden.
I just want people to do well in their photo endeavors. Okay, some people use this to pay their bills, to feed their families. Look, you're never going to go wrong with being more knowledgeable, being a better photographer when you're trying to run a business as a photographer. So let's just put it that way. By the way, let's make this suite even better. I found a better code.
Oh,
It's going to give you more money off. So it's going to be all capital letters, Roberto.
Okay.
So Roberto, Roberto, capital letters, 350. That will give you $350 off, which will pay for 2 nights of your hotel room at the ranch.
That's awesome.
And honestly, guys, I think people need to come.
Yeah, people. I'm going to look at it.
They just need to come. I know it's more fun to buy gear and lights and this and lenses and this and that, but guys, it's time to shut. It's time to get serious.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying, Roberto, is Jeff and I need to quit making New Year's resolutions about making more photos of people and actually get out and make more photos of people.
And make more photos, yeah.
I want people to realize education makes your equipment shine.
Yeah.
And education is a word that's so boring, but it's skill acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Skill acquisition is what makes your brand new 85 1.2 be 20 times more valuable than when you first take it out of the box without any skill.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I will say is, I know some of you say, I'm already good enough for what I need. I don't need to get any better or invest any more money because I've been doing this for 10 years or 20 or 50 or 600 years. I'm still practicing every week. I am still questioning how I can be a better photographer next week. Okay? I don't think it's healthy for us to think that. I wouldn't put myself through all of this, creating this entire conference, if it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And no one has ever come to the Photo Creators Conference and said it wasn't worth it. It is a life-changing experience because you have never seen a conference like that.
Yeah, it sounds really amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so going to have links to the registration for that and information about that conference on the show notes, along with this super special discount code. Appreciate that. And we'll also have links to Rocky Nook's site where you can pick up your great new book, which is out now, and your other books, right? We'll have links to all of this stuff. You're prolific, and there's lots of ways people can learn from you. So YouTube channel, you name it, you got all that stuff. So we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. It's been such a pleasure. You kind of got me thinking about what am I doing in May. So let me go look at my calendar.
But 350 off. It's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's not nothing.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and great job on the book, and good luck with everything. Okay.
Mason and Jeff, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's a fun title of the podcast. It's a fun name. You guys are so cool. I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with me, and I appreciate all the people listening, and they're probably thinking to themselves, like, what am I doing? Is like, does this relate to me? And I hope I made a little difference.
Yeah.
I definitely did.
You definitely did. I don't think the things that you're talking about are flash photography specific. The core values that you're talking about, hard work, practice, identifying your mistakes, and learning from them, those are going to help any photographer. So I think all of our listeners have something to take away from this.
Exponential.
And I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much.
Guys. I appreciate you all, and have a beautiful Wednesday, I believe, today.
Yeah. It's Wednesday today. I think. All right. Thank you so much, Roberto. Take care.
Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.